Hello, everybody, and welcome to Digitally Uploaded Podcast. I'm Matt Sainsbury, the editor-in-chief of digitallydownloaded.net, and with me this week we have two of our usuals. We've got Matt. G'day, Matt.
Hello. How are you?
Hello. I'm alive, and that's a pretty good thing to be. Yourself?
I'm alive.
That's good. Live is good.
Yes.
Can't play games unless you're alive.
Well,
we as far as we know, maybe up there they have unlimited Yakuza games and all the good stuff, and no bad games, no bricks, no stuff.
Wouldn't be heaven if that wasn't the case.
Lots of content.
Yeah, lots of good content. Lots of good content. No bad contents. And that voice you heard there was Trent. Hello, Trent. How you doing?
Thanks.
Cool. So we got plenty to talk about this week, as always. Always keep you entertained here at digitallydownloaded.net. But we'll start off with some Hatsune Miku music because that's how we always start. This one's a pretty neat track from Project Diva, Future Tone, and other games. And we'll be back after you have a listen. 'Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that. Right, so for the first section of the podcast this week, we're going to talk about Tomb Raider. It's pretty relevant at the moment. Not only is the movie just in cinemas, the new movie, the reboot, are they actually framing it as a reboot? Are they calling it like a reboot to the Tomb Raider cinematic universe or whatever they want to call it? I don't know. It's a new
Tomb
film
Raider
anyway.
involved.
It doesn't have Angelina Jolie as Tomb Raider. It's got somebody else, and I hate myself for forgetting her name. But yeah, it looks good.
I don't know how you pronounce her last name.
Yes,
Vikander? Something like
yes, her. Yes,
Her.
she looks good. It looks like it's a pretty good film. I think it's. I've heard mixed things about it, but it's the people who I probably trust their opinions on films the most seem to like it. So I'm sure at some stage I'll check it out, probably on iTunes because I never go to the cinema anymore. But yeah, it looks good. Also this week in Tomb Raider news, the new film. Film. I was just talking about the films. It's early in the morning and I'm a little bit scatterbrained. The new game was announced, which is subtitled, I can't remember what. I'm really having a bad morning about remembering stuff.
Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
Shadow of the Tomb Raider, yes.
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure that was already known by basically everybody out there because it was leaked and stuff. But it was formally announced today. It comes out in September this year, I want to say. Is that right? October? This year.
September, yeah.
Yeah, September. And I'm pretty sure it'll be good since the last two were pretty damn good as far as action blockbusters go. Well, that was an interesting noise, Matt.
That was me being doubtful about whether it's going to be good. The last two games were very good, but this one, they were made by Crystal Dynamics, and they are at the moment busy working hard on their Avengers game. So Shadow of the Tomb Raider is being made by Eidos Montreal, who I've never enjoyed anything that they've made, so I'm having my doubts.
Ooh, that's a bit harsh.
Well, they made that Thief reboot, so...
Yes, and I actually find it hard to forgive them for that because as a Thief fan, that reboot just it didn't pull any punches in terms of hurting my heart and soul and basically ruining the entire franchise, and that's why we haven't seen a Thief since, I think.
All I know about Thief is I picked it up for $4 from Big W, and that was it.
That's probably about $6 too much.
Yeah, they really should pay people to play that one. It was not a good game, unfortunately. But in fairness, they also made this is Eidos Montreal also made the two Deus Ex games, and the two recent ones. And the last one I felt was okay-ish as a kind of action blockbuster, but the one before it was a really good game, I felt, and I think if they can capture some of the magic they achieved with that first Deus Ex. Shadows of the Tomb Raider or whatever it is would be pretty good, I think. I hope. I'm really hoping it's good because I really enjoyed the first two Tomb Raiders, or the two rebooted Tomb Raiders anyway.
I think it all just depends whether Rihanna Pratchett is writing it. If or if they're going to get somebody else to do the writing.
Yeah, I don't know. To be horribly controversial, I didn't think the way the story worked in the Tomb Raider games was great. I think Rihanna Pratchett is a really good writer, and I think she did a really good job with what she was given. But I didn't think that the script was as well integrated into the gameplay itself as it could have been. I felt like it was kind of two different things running side by side when I played those two games. And that was my main criticism of the Tomb Raider things. The gameplay itself is basically Uncharted, but with a Tomb Raider skin. And then the story didn't always gel particularly well with what was going on screen. But for me, what I really liked about the Tomb Raider games was... Well, it was mostly the presentation, actually. I'm not a huge fan of blockbuster nonsense, as most people know, but I really enjoyed the way that those games were presented. They had that exotic kind of feel about them, and they had the horror elements that is kind of important for, I think, what Tomb Raider stands for, and the action was good. I enjoyed it more than Uncharted, and that's the main thing, I think, for me. So I'm hoping that with this one, the story is better integrated into the actual gameplay.
Who knows? Maybe with a rush script, it will be much more enjoyable because there will be less content.
Is it rushed? I mean, how long has this been in development for?
At least a couple of years.
Yeah.
Wasn't the last Tomb Raider really recent though?
No,
It
it was
like 3 years ago.
A few years ago.
Yeah, it came out on Xbox exclusively for 6 months or whatever.
And
Xbox
then it was
timed
out on
exclusive.
PlayStation next year, yeah.
Yeah, and then it came out as like a better edition on PlayStation the year after. So yeah, while it might feel a little bit recent for people who played the PS4 version or whatever, I think the game itself has been around a long time, and they probably shifted resources to Eidos and Montreal to start working on this quite a few years ago, I would imagine. So it shouldn't be too rushed.
Well, I mean that first leak was just after the last game came out, and that was end of 2015.
Oh, well, in that case, they've been working at it pretty hard for quite a while. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting they kept the name then and didn't change it. Would have changed it just to screw with everyone and ruin the reputation of the leaker.
Yeah, the leak that was possibly orchestrated and a deliberate sort of marketing stunt.
Yeah, possibly. I mean,
our
the
guy was working on the thing on his laptop on the train where anyone could look over his shoulder and see what it said.
Yeah, that seems all a little bit too convenient, doesn't it? You'd have to hope that an employee of a company of that size, with all the contractual things that they have going on, would not do that unless they were told to.
Well, I guess they needed to gauge where the game was going to go with, the representation of what Rise of the Tomb Raider sort of gave after that whole split to the PlayStation, and fans were angry, that sort of thing. So they might have had to gauge if this game would even be worth developing.
I think it was always intended that. I mean, I can't imagine a point in the future, at least in the medium term, that there's not a Tomb Raider game in development on some level, because it's such a major franchise, and there's too much money there. It's kind of Square Enix's major Western property, so they're not going to let it go, and that was always going to happen. There was always going to be a sequel. So, what do people think of the trailer? The actual reveal trailer, now that we've seen it.
Was there a trailer?
There was a trailer? Was there a trailer? I thought there was like a short trailer.
I haven't seen. I thought it was just, and because I got really annoyed by this, where they did the whole countdown thing, and then at the end of the countdown, it's like, oh, we're just confirming that it's actually called Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which everyone already knew. And by the way, here's another countdown for like a month until we actually release the trailer.
Right. Well, I thought I'd seen somewhere that the trailer had been leaked. I hadn't seen it myself, but obviously not, which is pretty crappy.
Oh, maybe there's a teaser trailer I hadn't seen.
Okay. Oh, anyway, it looks like we don't know enough about it.
Yeah, I'm with Matt here as well. I sort of knew about the leak, but then when the actual announcement happened, it sort of went to the back of my head, and I didn't.
There's a 20-second teaser trailer, which is like live action, and looks like it may as well be or maybe it's not live action, but it doesn't really show anything. And the full reveal comes on April 27. So it was an announcement of an announcement, basically.
Yeah, I wish publishers didn't do that. If they're going to announce something, at least give people something about it to talk about and think over. All right. Well, since we're not going to be talking about that, how do you guys think? What do you think about the direction that Tomb Raider has taken? Because obviously the last couple of games and the movie and all of that kind of stuff, the entire franchise has really spun in a different direction from where it was at through the PS2 and PS3 era, before Crystal Dynamics ended up acquired by Square Enix. So where do you think? What do you think of the way that the franchise has been handled at the moment?
Well, this approach definitely makes me more interested into it. Like, it's all gritty, it's dark, that more serious undertones and survival instinct into Tomb Raider is what made me more interested in this franchise compared to the PlayStation era, I guess, of the series. So, yeah, I'm keen for it.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting direction they've gone, in particular because a lot of people seem to forget about the other series of games that I think they're not actually called Tomb Raider anymore. There's the Tomb Raider series, which is the rebooted big blockbuster one, and then there's the Lara Croft series, which is more of that sort of classic style Tomb Raider. And that was where there was that isometric one, that Temple of Osiris, and another similar one that before that, which the name I can't remember. And there was also Lara Croft Go on mobile, which was a very, very good game. As far as
not just on mobile, you can actually get that on PS4 and stuff now.
Yeah. It's come out on like basically every other console since, but it was originally designed as a mobile game, so it had that very sort of bite-sized puzzles, easy to jump in and out of, and I think that worked really well. So it's kind of, they've done this weird thing where you've got not weird, a clever thing, I think, where you've got the huge blockbuster games that have gone in that more serious direction that they've gone in, and then you've still got another avenue for those more classic Tomb Raider kind of ridiculous nonsense.
Yeah, the kind of Indiana Jones junk.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I love those. I actually really like the Temple of Osiris one. That was all puzzle heavy, and it was about delving into tombs and getting past traps and all that. And it had a multiplayer mode, which was really neat. And it was really enjoyable. And I think Square Enix has done a pretty good job of balancing out all the various things that people like from the Tomb Raider series, and giving everybody who is a fan of the older Tomb Raider games something to enjoy, while also keeping it modern and finding a way to keep a new audience. I wish they didn't bother with the multiplayer stuff in the blockbuster games. That was pretty awful.
They didn't in the most recent one, did they?
Was there?
Rise of the Tomb Raider didn't have any multiplayer, I don't think.
It must just be
mistaken.
It might just be the first one that I remember. I just remember trying to play that and finding it absolutely woeful and a waste of development resources.
Yeah.
So if they did drop it,
it was a disaster.
Yeah.
No, it looks here that Rise of the Tomb Raider has multiplayer. Just looking up the Wikipedia.
Oh, all right. Well, that clearly shows how much attention I paid to that.
Yeah, that's a waste of development resources. They should just drop that. We don't know, obviously, if it'll be in this new one, but
it almost certainly will be, and it almost certainly will be bad.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, it's really interesting for me because Tomb Raider always had that perception of not the games themselves were decent, people thought, but it was always the kind of the sexuality of the character that was kind of the focus of those earlier games. And I find it really interesting that since the reboot onwards, Square Enix hasn't actually changed anything about the character or her design, really. And yet people have managed to move past that perception about what Lara Croft stood for. So yeah, I find that really interesting. I think that's really well done by Square Enix. It's probably actually more to do with Rhianna Pratchett's excellent writing of the character, but it's definitely a more mature franchise now.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the marketing as well. Like in the original games, in the games themselves, it wasn't really that much of a sexualized game or character. I mean, aside from having large breasts in some of the more recent games, that was about the extent of it. But then that kind of very 90s video game marketing just took the idea of this character as a sex object and ran with it as far as they could, and that kind of, I think, colored a lot of people's impressions of the whole franchise.
I think that was it. And I think also it was one of the rare games that had kind of a female protagonist in that era, especially the PlayStation 1 time, where there was an attempt to try and make her look as realistic as possible and all that kind of stuff. So I think the audience and community itself flipped out about that for stupid reasons. And that plus the marketing, which you mentioned, just led to I think perceptions of the game that were not fair on it. There were definitely perceptions of the game that were not fair on it. And I think with the reboots, I think the community is more mature, the industry is more mature, and the marketing is more mature. So even though the actual game design isn't that much different, or at least Lara Croft's design isn't that much different, definitely people take it more seriously now, which is good.
Are they though? But the film, though, everyone's complaining that that the actress doesn't have as large tits that Tomb Raider should have. So clearly, the industry is still quite immature about that.
I don't know about everyone. I just think it's stupid.
I think that's a subsect of people who aren't that really interested in the games themselves and haven't really been following them, and have just kind of are drawing comparisons between the Angelina Jolie movies in this one, which is a waste of time because they have nothing to do with one another.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing this film. Probably won't see it until it comes out on iTunes, but I think she looks great. From what I've seen in short clips and trailer and screenshots and stills and stuff, I think she looks great as Lara Croft. So I have to remember her name at some stage, but I don't think she's been. I don't think I've seen her in anything before, which is probably why I can't remember her name. But yeah, definitely looking forward to the film. So on that note, we'll go to some music. I can't even remember what I've picked. It's something from Ni no Kuni, actually, because there's a new Ni no Kuni out very soon, and the music from the first one is really good. So enjoy, and we'll be back with some more things to talk about soon. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so this week or was it last week, the week before? Really recently, anyway. DJ Max released on the PlayStation 4, and DJ Max is a really good rhythm game that combines a couple of the more obscure PSP titles from a more obscure rhythm game franchise and pulls them all together into something that's really good value. And I've got a review up on digitallydownloaded.net, so have a read of it and all that stuff. But after playing through that and spending an ungodly amount of time with it, trying to get good enough to actually enjoy it, I have rhythm games on the brain, so I thought we'd talk about that in the podcast this week, since everybody plays rhythm games or has at least played a rhythm game in the past. And it's a genre that doesn't get much attention, I think. It seems to be one that kind of... It's there for people who are fans of it, but it doesn't get the mainstream attention that it probably deserves, and I don't really understand why.
Not enough explosions.
Not enough explosions. Yeah, probably.
Guns.
It's too hard, because a lot of rhythm games are really hard, I find.
Yeah.
That's the odd thing. Like, it's a genre that seems to revel in every game being the Dark Souls of rhythm games. That's a
Matt,
joke,
you're
by the way.
fired.
I don't actually say the Dark Souls stuff usually.
You just did.
I did, yeah. But every rhythm game seems to like to be difficult. DJ Max is bleepingly difficult, I find, and I say that as somebody who's spent like over 1,000 hours playing Hatsune Miku ones, which are challenging them enough themselves. So, yeah, do you find the difficulty puts you off them at all, Matt? Because I know you have a love-hate relationship with hard games at times.
Not really, but I find I guess most of the ones I play are not that difficult anyway, and they tend to have a good kind of... I mean, I say this with having only played the DJ Max demo, not the actual game. Most other rhythm games these days are quite good at have quite a good difficulty curve, so they get you into the swing of things quite well. But I also find that the difficulty in them is kind of what's the way to describe it? It's very much about, I guess, practice and mastery and playing the same song over and over again until you're almost not really looking at the notes on the screen. You're just pressing them out of muscle memory.
Like playing a real instrument.
Yeah, I was just about to say, actually, that's probably true, since actually playing a real instrument is a really hard game as well. And at some point you get really good at it and quite enjoy it. So I guess that attempting to emulate that is kind of the goal of most music rhythm games.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I don't know if it's a deliberate attempt to emulate that so much as just that's a kind of style of arcade games in general, and that's where they came out from. And they remind me, oddly enough, I find them quite similar to shoot 'em ups in that same kind of way.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because I can't stand shoot 'em ups. But I do love rhythm games. I think for me it is the music thing, because I did spend years and years learning piano and violin and stuff. So I do like the process of playing music, and for me, rhythm games are a way of tapping into that while still playing a video game and stuff. But yeah, if they're... I mean, there's so many different approaches to rhythm games as well. But you've got to give the kind of the examples that we're talking about before. DJ Max is the kind of traditional notes flying down the screen. You need to hit them in time. By the time they hit kind of the bar at the bottom of the screen, whereas Hatsune Miku games are more about icons popping up all over the screen, and you need to kind of follow those with your eyes as you're playing as well. What kind of rhythm game do you generally find the most enjoyable?
Who are you asking?
Oh, anybody. It's an open question.
Well, I haven't talked for a while.
Yes, you haven't talked for a while. Trent.
Yes. All right. So I think for me, a lot of rhythm games I find enjoyable are things like, for example, I like the best in the new Rayman games is the rhythm sections. Like, they're amazing. They've got songs, they're a little bit obscure, so they've got that high pitch, funky sort of tune to it, and in general, every beat you hit seems to actually impact and give a reference to the actual beats in the song. And I like rhythm games which you sort of feel like you're part of the actual music in the background, where it's not ambiguous or a little less, forced onto you when you're playing. So yeah, rhythm games which actually feel involved, I guess, is a really good one. Things like Harmonite I liked really, really well. So every little note you hit would actually correspond to something really well. And, you could get into the rhythm really well and be like, bam, 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 and then like die because I have no rhythm. But Guitar Hero, for example, I could never play Guitar Hero. It's just, I'm way too unco for games like that. And ironically, I learned to play myself the hardest instrument, a violin, and yet can't handle simple rhythm games like Guitar Hero.
Yeah, it's interesting one point you make about feeling like you're part of the music. For me, that's really important with rhythm games. As much as I love the Hatsune Miku games, one thing that does bother me a little bit about them is that the actual action seems divorced of the music at times, in that it's so abstracted. It doesn't really feel like you're playing an instrument, for example. But when I pick up something like, DJ Max is a good example, or also Demo, which is available on Switch and phone and stuff, where the note maps actually feel like you're playing an instrument, and if you miss notes, the music goes weird. If you're slightly out of time, you actually can hear that out of timeness coming through the speakers and stuff. So I like a rhythm game that really does that, kind of tries to draw you into the music and makes you feel like you're part of the performance. And I think most rhythm games try and do it, but some are quite abstracted and don't feel as good as rhythm games as a result. Theatrhythm, the Final Fantasy one, is another one that I find I really enjoyed it, and I love the music and I love the Final Fantasy theme and stuff, but I never felt like those games really pulled you into the music by making you feel like you're part of the performance, which, that's a bit of a distancing effect for me with rhythm games.
But you know what the best rhythm game is, though, right? Yakuza.
It does have the karaoke sections, doesn't it?
Yes.
And they're really good fun. They're really good fun. Yakuza's got a bit of everything, though. Yakuza's got a bit of everything. It seems to do everything well. It doesn't matter what kind of game you're talking about, it does it really well. Like Yakuza 6, which is just out, has the
It's not out until for ages.
Oh, is it not out? Oh, that's right.
Until April, got delayed.
Yeah, it got delayed. Well, when you play it, it has a bit of everything. It has a full simulation thing in there where you actually need to build up a family of Yakuza, a clan, and you need to set your lieutenants up and create a whole hierarchy and manage them and all that kind of stuff. And then it's got a baseball game, it's got a rhythm game, it's got a half dozen retro video games all fully emulated in there. It does everything. Is it
Yakuza 6 that has the cat cafe game, mini game?
I don't know.
Where you manage a cat cafe, or was that?
No, I don't think so. I've never played a cat cafe mini game in a Yakuza game, so I've obviously missed that. It's very easy to miss stuff in Yakuza games as well. It has a online chat game, Matt.
Yeah.
Yakuza 6.
No, yeah, Yakuza 6 has a cat cafe.
I must have missed it. I haven't. I mean, I finished the main story of Yakuza 6, obviously, because I had to for review. But there's stuff I'm sure I've missed, like side stuff, bonus stuff, extra stuff that I've just kind of ignored or not played.
Oh my god!
Otherwise,
this game's version of the hostess clubs from the earlier games. You go out and you find stray cats and feed them and get them to like you, and then bring them back to your cat cafe.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll have to go and track that down now because that sounds pretty good. Not very rhythm game, but still good.
Well, there's a certain rhythm to it, I guess.
Well, see, that'd be a good one. They should do a rhythm game with cats, like stuff. And,
like a pat's the cat, and like every stroke is like a different beat.
Yeah. on that note, we might go to some music again. I don't know what I've picked again. I'm really having a bad morning. It's some music from Yakuza, actually. Yeah. So because we'll be talking about one of the Yakuza games in our section next, so we'll intro it with some music from Yakuza 6. Enjoy, and we'll be back soon. And welcome back, everybody. Okay, so for the in-depth into one particular video game, this week we're going to look at Yakuza 0, because Yakuza 6, the review embargo is lifted this week, so everybody's talking about the series. Unfortunately, Matt and Trent haven't had a chance to play Yakuza 6 yet, but we have all played Yakuza 0, and yeah, we'll talk about that one, I think, because it's a great game. Everybody should play it. And it really sets up the entire franchise anyway. So because being a prequel and being an origin story, it obviously establishes the characters and gives the rest of the narrative for the next 6 games some context. So yeah, top line thoughts. What about the Yakuza 0 game did you enjoy most, Trent?
Well, it introduced me into the series. So before then, I've heard of the franchise, but I never really played any of them because, well, they were all exclusively to PlayStation. I didn't have a PlayStation before the PlayStation 4, that sort of thing. So Zero introduced me to the franchise, and it was a really good introduction point rather than picking up, whatever the latest number title was at the time and finding myself completely lost. So in that respect, it probably brought in a lot of people which were in a similar boat to me to the franchise and now loving it. So yeah, that's why I love Zero. But then now I've played 1 and I don't really like 1 that much as Zero. So Zero is definitely the better game. But yeah, it was just so obscure and over the top, and oh, it was amazing. There's hardly any words to describe it because it's just the game itself was so Japanese, but at the same time so like GTA like. It was like I never had played anything like that before. So it definitely left a mark on me, and I like the management aspects of it, especially like being able to like run all the casinos and stuff, and I like to have it so I had all the areas and were raking in all the money. Like I like the management side of the game, which that's probably why I didn't really like 1 that much, because it didn't really have that sort of the real estate or the casino aspect into that. So yeah, that's the biggest thing I liked about the games.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of people got their first experience with Yakuza thanks to Yakuza 0. I think Sega, for whatever reason, didn't really push the franchise out west until until Yakuza 0. The previous games were all available in English, but they were fairly obscure JRPGs that not a lot of people really understood or had played. For whatever reason, Yakuza 0 really went wide, and I think pulled in a lot of fans and got a lot of people interested in the series, which is good given that it was the origin story and therefore gave people a basis to start playing the rest of the game and the rest of the series. And it was the thing that I like about the game is that it just offers so many different ways to play. It gives you just about anything that you could possibly want to do within a video game. You can kind of distract yourself with. It's got the main plot, which is good and oddball and interesting enough in its own way, but it also has every part of these cities that you explore and play in has something different to do, whether it's side quests which tell a bit of a story, or it's mini games such as the karaoke that we mentioned in the last section, or there's slot car races, or there's what else is there? There's adult video stores, or that was a good section. There's what else is there to do? Baseball. There's a wrestling thing in there as well, which was just hilarious. An underground wrestling mini game, and it's just anything you could possibly want to do in these games, you can do them. And Yakuza 0 was the best, I think, until that point, until Yakuza 6 anyway. Yakuza 0 was the best in providing a very rounded experience with a whole lot of different mini game stuff to do. Was it your first game in the series too, Matt? Is that?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I remember that.
I think I played a little bit of the first one on PS2, but I didn't really play much of it, and I don't remember what I thought about it or much of it. I just think I played it. But yeah, so really, Yakuza 0 was my first real introduction to the series, and it was good. It was a good game. It was like, I think, Trent, you brought up Grand Theft Auto, and it was kind of like if Grand Theft Auto was good, that's what Yakuza is.
No, that's Sleeping Dogs.
Yeah, that too, actually.
Yeah, Sleeping Dogs is good as well. Sleeping Dogs is obviously more exactly like what GTA offered, whereas Yakuza has a lot stronger kind of RPG mixes, JRPG elements. It for people who haven't played a Yakuza game, I don't know why you haven't yet. You should, but if you haven't, where GTA kind of goes for great scale and huge cities to explore and stuff, the Yakuza games have very small cities to explore. It's a tiny section of it's open world, but it's very small in terms of land space. But what they pack into it more than makes up for the size of it. And I think that's a better way to go with open world games, because I really hate downtime in open world games. You spend so much time just traveling from one spot to the next, or then you fast travel, which kind of ruins the whole immersion within the open world. Whereas with Yakuza, you get the open world freedom, but without having any of that useless downtime where you're just driving around or walking around or just moving from one objective point to the next. None of that happens in Yakuza 0, which keeps the action going nice and fast. It keeps the pace of the game really healthy.
I agree. You said it all perfectly. I agree. Excuse me.
And I mean, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I had nothing else to say after that. I was
all right.
just saying to fill the void.
Or going on to Matt's point, it's sort of like, even if you're walking around for an extended period of time, Yakuza is like great in that saying, there's a fight or there's like a side quest which just randomly pops out of nowhere on your way to wherever you're going. So there's always things to do to keep you entertained, or not really the main game. And I also like how it's like sort of like a little slice of life in like a small suburb in Tokyo or something. Like it's not a huge grand scale. This is the whole city sort of thing as well.
Yeah, I've never been, or I hadn't been to Japan in the 80s, which is where Yakuza 0 is set. But I wish I had after having played this game, because it seems like it would have been a wild time. And that's kind of the other, that whenever I play a Yakuza game, and this is especially relevant to Yakuza 6 because it's set in the modern era and it's quite familiar to me in terms of the time setting. I always feel like I always end up going researching plane tickets, the prices for plane tickets back to Japan, because the games do such a great job of actually recreating what it's like to actually be in the country and to be in either the big cities or the smaller villages as you do in Yakuza 6. And yeah, just being in that world and just exploring it and just, even dropping into a restaurant and seeing what's on the menu, all of those kinds of those small things, those small details, which is part of, being in an actual city. All of that's recreated so well in the game. And yeah, I wish I was in Japan in the 80s. The 80s must have been a wild time.
Yes. Good old bubble economy.
Yeah. It was a good time in Japan back then. Yeah. That's the thing I really loved more than anything else about Yakuza 0 is the actual setting of it as well, because it is a prequel when the characters are younger and stupider, and it was set during a very different time. It has all kinds of in-jokes about what happened in Japan since, what Japan was like back then. Like one of the side quests I remember most is the guy had a portable telephone. You did a side quest because this guy had a portable telephone, which was actually backpack sized. You had to carry it around on your back like the portable telephones back then were, and the batteries ran out, so you had to go running all over the place to try and find some batteries for it. And this was all in the name of the convenience of being able to make a phone call from anywhere, when it was so much more convenient just to walk half a block in a direction to find a payphone. But yeah, those kinds of things are subtle nods to what life was like back then, and it was clever. There was another great scene where, and this actually happened in Japan when the GST was introduced, because GST wasn't always a part of Japanese taxation, but it came through in the 80s, and that happened, according to the Yakuza series, that happened because the guy, one of the tax department, actually was having a drink with Kiryu, the Yakuza guy, and the reason that the GST happened in Japan was because it was a suggestion from an actual Yakuza guy, which was just it's a really funny scene, and it's that kind of thing that I really loved about Yakuza 0, the way it manages to be very relevant today by kind of looking at the history of Japan in the 80s and really places it in that setting, which was really good.
Yeah. I think also one thing I loved about it, especially compared to other sort of crime drama type games like Grand Theft Auto, is there was especially in the main characters, there's a lot of humanity and a lot of, they're these very ridiculous over the top characters, but they're also very down to earth and very human and sort of kind and caring in ways that you don't often see, especially in that sort of video game. And like there are a lot of side quests. When you're not sort of going and getting into fights with other Yakuza or going to do some bit of phone dating, then there are side quests where you just get to see the main characters just being good people and being very human people. Like I think the one that I always remember, and this might be a minor spoiler, so tell me if I'm not allowed to say this, Matt.
No, go ahead.
Is the side quest where there's a big long line outside a game store where everyone's queuing up to buy the latest game. I can't remember what it's called within Yakuza 0 itself, but it's a very obvious nod to Dragon Quest. And there's this big long line to get the latest Dragon Quest game, and right at the back there's a kid who's been saving up all his money, and he's finally going to be able to. And then he gets to the front of the line and he buys the game, and then somebody comes along and steals it from him. And so you embark on this lengthy quest to help this little kid get his game back from somebody who stole it from him, and it kind of becomes this almost like a piggyback sort of thing where you find the next guy and he had stolen it, and you find the guy who had stolen it, but he doesn't have any anymore because somebody stole it from him, and it goes through like 3 or 4 rounds of this, and then eventually you find the guy who had it, and it was the little kid's father who couldn't afford it but just really wanted to get this game for his kid and had to resort to stealing it for whatever reason. And so you end up just going out of your way to help this kid get his game back. And there are so many little side quests like that that just have you being just a good person and helping out the community.
If not a good person, then a really funny kind of person. I mean, there's another scene where, again, you're also helping a kid out, but this time it's because the kid sees at the back of like a dingy alley a vending machine. I don't know if you did this quest, Matt.
Yeah.
It's a hilarious quest where the kid is really interested in this vending machine that's at the back of a very dingy alley, and the vending machine is not for drinks or whatever. It's actually for like adult magazines. And then Kiryu feels like he wants to help this kid out because the kid's so interested. But to do so, he needs to stealth his way past some adults who would not approve of him buying such content for a kid. It's like this stealth minigame thing for the purposes of buying a dirty magazine for a kid, which is weird. It's presented in a really weird and funny way. And it's just one of those things that you just come across as you're just wandering around the world, which is great.
But then it also kind of goes into this sort of Kiryu's having this like moral quandary about whether or not he should actually be buying this magazine for this kid and what's going to happen, and he made this promise to this kid before he realized what it was that the kid was asking for, and
that's right. Yes.
He's like, well, I can't break my promise, but should I be giving this magazine to this kid? If I don't do it, somebody else will, and isn't it better that I can speak to this kid and help him know what he's getting into and actually talk to him about stuff rather than just letting him try to figure things out for himself.
I mean, Kiryu's a really moral kind of guy as far as Yakuza go, and that's kind of goes to, I guess, the legend of Yakuza in real Japan as well, where they're not just violent mobsters. They actually have like a code of conduct, and they don't involve civilians in their affairs, and they end up being, I don't want to say legitimized, but they're actually, I mean, they have relationships with the police. They're the heads of the Yakuza family are quite well known. They don't get arrested because they keep a peace, oddly enough, by chasing away less organized criminal elements and stuff like that. And Japan has a really odd relationship with the Yakuza, and these games, Yakuza 0 as well, does a really good job of actually presenting that relationship with the rest of Japanese society that the Yakuza have. And they do that by having characters like Kiryu and even Majima, and who's the crazy one. They have these characters be quite moral, ethical kind of people, even though they're doing often very violent and criminal things. The way they do things it's justified or at least explained to the audience. So there was a really good, a really great piece actually. A journalist actually got, this is for Yakuza 3, and this is quite a while ago now, but a journalist actually got some real life Yakuza to sit down and play Yakuza 3, and that report it's worth Googling up. It's easy to find, and it's hilarious to read, but it actually kind of comes to the conclusion that the game does a really good job of actually representing these people and the kind of nonsense that they get up to, I guess. So there you go. Yakuza is also realistic, believe it or not. And on that note, we've gone over time anyway, so we will have a wrap this week. Thanks very much for listening, as always. Apologies.
What are we going to wrap about? Is that the last song of the podcast?
Yeah, it's the DK rap from Donkey Kong 64. The worst song of all time. No, I'm not going to subject you people to that. It's actually Grim Fandango. Some really cool music from that game that I've picked to finish things off. Thanks very much for listening. Apologies for being scatterbrained this morning. I don't know what's wrong with me. I might need to go to a doctor and get my brain checked or something. I'm just not thinking clear. But we will see you at the next podcast. And thanks for being on, Matt and Trent.